Welcome to the ESG panel. In this panel, we will be discussing about the environmental, social, and governance competitiveness of the industry, talking about transparency, suitability, and then these may be the two sides of the same coin. So with regards to where we stand as an industry with respect to environmental, social, and governance, and these are new trends, and organizations that wish to strive in the global maritime community should consider embedding ESG effectively into their strategy for growth and competitiveness. In this panel, we would like to discuss what should be the industry's top priorities with respect to ESG performance, what should be our priorities as an industry towards sustainable shipping, which are the key barriers and drivers towards a more sustainable future for the industry, and we would like to also highlight any best practices and lessons to be learned from the past and or other industries. To have this discussion, we have gathered a panel of experts. Let me briefly introduce them to you. We have Carleen Lyden Walker. Carleen is the co-founder and executive director of North American Maritime Environment Protection Association, known as NAMEPA, and she's also an IMO Goodwill Maritime Ambassador. Kostas Gonis. Kostas is the Secretary General of Intercargo. Jan Fransen. Jan is the Executive Director of the Green Award Foundation. Stavros Maidanis, who is the Managing Director and Chief Sustainability Officer of the Capital Executive Ship Management. And last but not least, we have Maria Kiratsoudi. Maria is the Business Development Manager with ABS, based here in Athens. So I would like to welcome you all, and I would like to ask you to start your presentation. We'll start right away with Carleen. Carleen, let's hear from you.
Very much, Apostolos. I just want to give you a little background on NAMEPA. Our mission is to preserve the marine environment by promoting maritime best industry practices and educating the public to save our seas. It's important for us to remember what shipping industry's role is in global society. As recently illuminated by the ever-given blockage of the Suez Canal, trade has never been more important. And acting as a driving force of trade transportation, shipping industry is responsible for roughly 90% of all global trade. Shipping continues and contributes the least to atmospheric emissions per ton. With decarbonization on the horizon, let's look at regulations, solutions, investments, and other initiatives to welcome sustainability in the industry. Shipping represents 90% of all global trade. Let's not lose sight of our role in global society. And that is about $14 trillion in 2019. We have over 100,000 ships over 100 gross tons of an average age of 21.7 years. Representing $976 billion in terms of value. We're governed by environmental regulations issued by the IMO in terms of annexes that range from Annex 1 for the prevention of pollution by oil to Annex 6, which is the prevention of air pollution by ships. And the IMO, based on the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, has identify decarbonization goals for our industry to be adopted on a global basis. We're expecting the IMO to issue a strategy in 2023 in order to meet the goals it set for a 2030 achievement of 40% greenhouse gas reduction over our 2008 levels and a 50% reduction over by 2050. And there are many pathways and solutions how to get there, and some of the initiatives that are being looked at include NAMEPA's CSR ESG program, where we look at corporate social responsibility and environmental, social, and governance methods and practices in order to get to goals and reach these objectives for ESG. And our program offers guidelines for the maritime industry, along with a toolkit to achieve these guidelines and develop best practices. Companies that can meet our criteria for ESG earn their Maritime Sustainability Passport. Sustainable Shipping Initiative, or SSI, has its program and offers its pathway to achieving ESG goals. And the Zero Emission Ship Technology Association, ZESTAS, actually argues that we should get there immediately to zero emission ships. The Global Maritime Forum has been extremely active in terms of identifying areas and of initiatives that we can use in order to meet the overarching goals. The Getting to Zero Coalition, which works again towards getting to zero emissions by 2030, is an alliance of over 140 companies in maritime, energy infrastructure, and finance. The Sea Cargo Charter Initiative involves the charterers and makes them a part of the solution and allows charterers to set a benchmark for responsible shipping and transparent climate recording and improved decision-making. We also have the Poseidon Principles, where the money gets involved, where financiers have come together and identified what they are expecting of themselves to reduce their carbon in their portfolios, their lending portfolios. And obviously they're looking to their to the companies they're lending to in order to achieve those reduced carbon levels. And most recently, we're looking at the social part of our industry, which is the seafarer. The COVID-19 has created a crew change crisis that is just untenable for the sustainability of shipping, and is just inhumane from a social standpoint and a humanitarian standpoint. The Neptune Declaration of over 700 organizations argue that we need to take collective action in order to make sure that our mariners can do their jobs without undue burden, which they're suffering now. I wanted to highlight some of our NAMEPA member initiatives, including the Port of Los Angeles, MSC, Carnival, and RightShip. The Port of Los Angeles is as part of a broad coalition within that port called the St. Pedro Bay Port Clean Air Action. And they've developed a sustainable city plan and are part of that city plan to reduce emissions in one of the largest cities in the United States. Mediterranean Shipping Company is offering a variety of strategies for decarbonization. They've made a commitment to 45% usage of biofuels within their fleet, but they're also looking at hydrogen projects in order to ensure that they are moving forward as good stewards of our environment. Carnival Cruise Lines is one of the premier models for sustainability in the cruise world, and their goals for the decade of 2020 include reducing their carbon footprint by 20% and cold ironing capacity and reducing sulfur compounds. I think we can all agree that RightShip has been committed since 2001 to helping us measure what we're doing in terms of our emissions and advocating that we raise the environmental awareness in the industry. But how can industry navigate the challenges below? We need to look at regulatory factors, we need to look at finance and commercial influences, as well as transitioning as a complete industry. Some of the initiatives that are coming out of NAMEPA include our CSC, our ESG Maritime Sustainability Passport. We also have a MARPOL compliance guide. We have our Marine Industry Learning Guide so that the public can learn about our industry and hopefully become more involved in it. And we communicate the value proposition of our industry. But I want to thank everyone who is on this call. I want to thank everybody that is part of this conference for their individual commitments to saving our seas and to helping our industry be the best possible steward of our environment, of our social framework, and good governance. Thank you again to Green4Sea for allowing me to be here with you today.
Thank you very much, Carleen. Let's move to Stavros. Stavros.
Good afternoon from my end. Dear Apostle, thank you very much for the opportunity that we have to present our views on ESG and the journey towards the sustainable shipping. In our days, ESG, sustainability is one of the, let's say, topics very up to very high to the senior management agenda of all shipping companies. Very briefly, when we're talking about ESG, we're talking about 3 pillars: environmental, social, governance. It's very important to see how, as an industry, we have to cope, especially within during this time, especially after COVID-19 times. I would like to, from the beginning, to say that we have to find and we have to comply and to exercise a balance between those 3 elements: environmental, social, and governance. Because if we break this balance, the whole model will collapse for sure. So, as we heard from Carleen, CSR, corporate social responsibility, ESG, we heard in the maybe also known as sustainable management, sustainable development, environmental responsible, social responsible or social responsibility, triple bottom line, corporate citizenship. And at the end of the day, we are talking about the same concept, the same approach, and we have this approach which is in front of us, and it depends on which aspect of each pillar we are looking the concept and the approach of ESG. And as already mentioned, when we're talking about sustainable sustainability or sustainability of Earth, is not only for, is already in place for other industries, but for our industry, for the shipping industry, this is something relatively new, but for sure it's here and is coming for us for the forthcoming years. For shipping, when we are talking about sustainable shipping, the shipping should be always safe and secure, environmentally responsible, or reliable, and efficient. And when we're talking about efficient, we're talking about low cost. And the commercial aspect is coming to this part. In other words, shipping should be sustainable. I'm just giving a few examples of the 3 pillars: environmental, social, governance, that a shipping company may exercise and apply and comply with several aspects of sustainable and environmental and ESG. As far as it concerns the environment, all of us, we know that as a shipping industry, we are heavily regulated, and more regulations are coming for us in the next years. So we are talking about the regulatory compliance. We know we're discussing about emissions, the climate change. We have huge discussions about alternative fuels recently, the scrubbers, the ballast water management treatment. So this is the one aspect, the one pillar of how we can comply and exercise a sustainable approach. On the other hand, we have the social pillar. We're talking about the human rights. We're talking about our employees, both on board our vessels and ashore as well. We're talking about business ethics, working conditions, which is very, very important nowadays. And finally, the governance. We're talking about here transparency. We have to be transparent, and we have to prove that we're transparent as an industry. Revenue management, board compositions, and especially for the listed companies, I would say it's quite easy. It's more easy to comply with this aspect of ESG, but as a whole, we have to prove that we are a responsible and transparent industry as well, if we want to apply these principles. On the other hand, as we are talking about different aspects, we have different shipping stakeholders. I'm just referring to some of them, from the designers, shipbuilders, up to financiers that we heard earlier in our days, flag administrations, classifications, of course, our seafarers, etc. But it's not only the shipping stakeholders, the third parties, the interested third parties, but it's also for the whole life cycle of the ship, as we say, from the cradle to grave, from the design stage to construction, to the operation side, and to the final to the vessel disposal. So on each stage, different sustainability, the different pillars and aspects of sustainability, ESG, are compliant there, and we can see different approaches. That's why in the middle of the whole cycle, we're talking about, again, society, environmental, and governance. For sure, if we're talking about the ESG towards sustainable shipping, for sure, we have to increase our preparedness for the climate-related risk. As I said, we have quite a few new regulations, environmental regulations, in the coming years to comply with. It is needed to understand and raise the awareness of those issues. As I said, it's maybe now it's the time, the right time for us to implement this as an industry, this approach. And of course, when we are talking about sustainability as a strategy, this is something that will help us to drive transformations and new processes and practice to market environment witnesses profound regulatory changes under this ESG perspective. As we say, I would say that we are brushing this one. The ESG is the new normal, as new notions and definitions are coming for us right now. And I'm just saying only two words: transparency, which is very, very important, and the new approach with Poseidon, for example, principles that we heard earlier, which is related to our finance and financiers, interested parties. So, concluding, the key challenges in front of us: energy constraints, climate change, and massive economic change due to also the COVID-19 applications, and finally, increased scrutiny and higher expectations. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Stavros. Maria?
I would like to thank you also very much for the invitation. I would like to thank Apostolos and his team for being here today, as well as all the participants. Some of the items have already been touched by the previous speakers. However, in my presentation, I would like just to focus on the ESG principles, but mainly on the regulatory framework, and also how ESG can create value. Before going to this part, I would like just to mention, I would like to start my presentation with a short flashback. It was in December of 2015 when it has been decided by the United Nations, the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, and it has been requested several years by the IMO to be in compliance with these goals. So sustainability, as we have already said, has three pillars. The one is the environmental pillar, the second is the social, and the other is the governance. When you are creating your report, you don't have to be exactly in compliance with all these 17 items because they are overlaps, but you can be in compliance with several of the specific items and then start making amendments on the report depending on the needs. One important point that I would like to mention, it is the shift that we see, that sustainability dimensions coincides with the shift of the market value towards intangibles. If we put ourselves, let's say, 45 years back, we were more interested about financial capital and physical assets. But sustainability, it is beyond going green. Sustainable practices can bring vast value and benefits to the companies. Either it is a small to medium-sized company up until a very big one. And mainly now we are focused on intangible assets, such as the goodwill, the reputation, the motivation of the people. And this is all through, which by the end of the day, they're going to have financial consequences. But now we are much more focused also on this point. What are the ESG principles in shipping? We have already said about the environmental excellence. It's focused on preserving the natural air and the marine environment, and it has been manifested through the decarbonization efforts that we see across the globe. It's not only though the decarbonization efforts, just from the E, just a percentage, let's say 40, 30%. It is the air pollution, which is it is under the regulations 13 and 14, the reduction of SOx emissions, NOx emissions, particulate matter, volatile compounds, as well as black carbon. It is the ships recycling. It is also the ballast water management. It is how we treat chemical species, how we protect this, the environment from that side. Now on the social responsibility introduced the human element into the design and the operation of the marine vessels. The main concern is the workers' health, safety, and particularly the industry's high accident and fatality rates and security concerns related to piracy and other threats. Through the IMO regulatory framework, we see the ISM and the ILO code, while the last part, which is not very much famous, I would say, to we don't see any specific regulation from the IMO being referred to. It has to do with the governance excellence, with the principles that we have already said before, the transparency, the accountability, on how to manage corruption risk in case of something like this happens. Though we cannot find any specific regulation from IMO on this point, we can borrow the guidelines from the GRI reporting or from the SSAB reporting in order to have a profound basis. As we have already said, these targets are targets that they should be smart, they should be time limited, they should be focused, they should be specific. It cannot be a generic view, and it is something that most probably it will change after some time. It has to be a continuous, you don't just do it and you leave it, but you have to look at this through all the years. So this is why when we're discussing about ESG reporting, we set a plan of about 3 years or so. Now, while ESG factors are oftentimes called non-financial, they are linked to business competitiveness, and the way in which a company manages them has financial consequences. So when we are following the ESG proposition, we start from the E. Why we are doing the E? Because we want to minimize environmental risk. We minimize environmental operations through climate change resilience, and in that way we can minimize the environmental accidents. We secure environmental regulatory compliance, and we limit the associated transition cost, as well as we reduce the operating cost. We discuss and we will hear a lot about a new type of fuels, new type of technology. Which investment is the correct one? Okay, through the ESG proposition, you can have a look on which investment can, if you go through this path, you can avoid investments that they may not pay off because of longer term environmental issues. On the S side now, on the social side, we see that in companies that they are sustainable, we see people that they are motivated and engaged. We see more talented people being focused on these companies. Of course, it gives a competitive advantage. It gives access to the new markets and segments, and it allows the companies to charge a premium for providing climate-friendly services. One more point that we have already said so has to do with the green financing. Okay, the green financing trend is being driven by the regulation, principally by the IMO decarbonization targets and by the Poseidon principles. It is a market measure designed to link access to capital, improving energy efficiency and carbon reductions. This goes hand in hand with the green bond principles, which are designed also to provide issuers with guidance on key components involved in launching a credible green bond. So it's a puzzle of different items where if they can combine correctly, they will give a very nice output, very much attractive to the investors, which is what the companies want, especially the listed company wants at the end of the day. Things are changing. A shipping industry is undergoing a period of seismic changes, which requires that the class services evolves alongside it, implementing survey and certification services with broader advice around their option for decarbonization and ESG. In ABS, we possess the right experience, team, and approach to make this project a success. We have people working with the client from the initial concept up until the end, up until the assurance of the project. These are all the things that I would like to say from my side. I would like to thank you also very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Maria. Now, let's move on and let's give some time to Jan and Kostas to explain their thoughts. Let's say something like an opening statement. Jan, let's hear from you. What do you think about what we are about to discuss in this panel? Just give us, let's say, some outline of your thoughts.
Yes, Apostolos, thank you very much. Well, it was nice to hear the presentations from Carleen, Maria, and Stavros. And of course, a lot of elements, luckily, a lot of elements are recognizable. Well, you see it on the back screen behind me. We are working as well in shipping, inland shipping in Europe and seagoing shipping worldwide. But you see on the, what is it, left, right-hand side, you see a part of the Sustainable Development Goals we are loading on board of our program. So why did we make the relationship with the Sustainable Development Goals from the United Nations? Actually, because we think, as we said many times already in your other GREEN4SEA conferences, the time is changing very rapidly now. It's really going very fast. And we think the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, they can be your guidance as a shipping company. They can be your guidance to get direction to go in the right way. And of course, it all depends on financial situation and about competitiveness. It's not an easy task. It's absolutely not an easy task, but you really have to make choices. And why is it so important? I think I said it in the past, maybe in my presentation on NASI, working together. Today, when you look to society, the youngsters, let's say the age of 20, 30, 35, these people are becoming very critical about sustainable development. I see it in our country, I see it in many other countries. They raise their voice. And maybe shipping is hidden, if I am allowed to use that word, for the society. But as Carleen nicely indicated, the Ever Given, I had actually in mind to have a photograph of that. The Ever Given opens up a lot of attention for shipping. And people are literally looking to marine traffic and see all those dots moving over Earth, trading that 90% of goods over the world, as Carleen was also showing. And people, so the youngsters are becoming very critical, and they're going to demand to move fast. They don't allow us to continue in the old way. That's my message, and I like to contribute further at a later stage. Thank you.
I would like to say on behalf of the youngsters that we are not so critical of this sustainable development because we are all youngsters here. So let's hear from another youngster, Kostas Gonis. Kostas, your thoughts, where do we stand as an industry with respect to ESG? Give us an outline of your thoughts in view of an opening statement.
Thank you. Good day to all, to the distinguished co-panelists. Many thanks to Safety4Sea and you, Apostole, for hosting me in this very pertinent discussion. The very interesting presentations that we all watched covered a lot of ground, and most, if not all, aspects of this multifaceted agenda. As I like to say, companies across industries will have to change more in the next 15 years than in the past 100 years, and shipping will not be an exception. The ESG agenda is a once-in-a-century opportunity for shipping companies to adapt, and it's going to impact ship design, construction, but also retrofits, and in the end, day-to-day operations. It encompasses adaptation in strategy and its execution. And top of all, because I trust it will be a top-down approach, governance and leadership. I fully believe it is a time for collaborations. If some companies think that they can stay outside of all this and proceed on a business as usual mode on their own, they will be left behind. And overall, I believe this is a very promising era ahead of us. And I'm always optimistic that shipping will retain its prominent role in serving humanity's essential needs. So I'm looking forward to a very interesting discussion.
Okay, I would like to thank you for your, let's say, opening statements and presentations. Especially Carleen made a nice outline of practical market initiatives, and I would like to have this discussion not as an abstract discussion, but as a practical one. So my first question I would like to ask each and every one of you: is ESG the same for all players within the market? Is it the same for a ship operator, for a port, for an association, for a classification society, to put it in that sense? What should be the top priorities of its let's say, of its market stakeholder, to put it in a more generic framework? So what do you think? Is it the same, and what should be the top priorities of its stakeholder from your perspective? Let's start with Carleen.
Thank you, Apo. Absolutely. We are all part of the solution. It's important for all of us to participate equally and fully in ESG initiatives. What I think it's important to do is for everyone to take stock and have, number one, a clear idea of what ESG is and how it applies to their organization or company. And then when they identify where they are now, they need to identify where they need to be and how to get there. And there are many tools to assist them, including NAMEPA's Maritime Sustainability Passport and SSI's Roadmap and others. But we have to also look at the end-to-end. We can't just take out one piece and say, we fix this, therefore the whole continuum is fixed or is ESG compliant. We have to look at net environmental benefit. We have to look at net corporate activities, which include diversity, which we haven't really talked about today in terms of governance, social. And we have to look at the ethical practices that are encompassed by all companies. So end-to-end is important. I think Stavros made a great point when he said we are existing in the new normal. And also we have to look at the public scrutiny. With the recent grounding of the Ever Given in the Suez Canal, we are now in the public's eye, and we have the opportunity to communicate how good we can be.
Yeah. A couple of things. Yes. We also, with respect to sustainability, we normally refer to decarbonization, which we referred. Diversity, correctly you said, we haven't referred so much. Social, yes. Digitization, we haven't referred to digitization so far. And of course, the human element issues, which have been referred by several of our panelists. With respect to the Ever Given, just a quick one. Carleen, do you think it was a missed opportunity? We hosted a talk and we had a discussion about what went well. Normally, people tend to identify what went wrong. So what went well? do you think it was a missed opportunity? Because many insiders think it was a missed opportunity over there. What do you think?
Well, I think it gave us the event itself was, I won't call it a gift because there are a lot of people who don't think so, in terms of holding up trade and the impact on the shippers and the line itself. But for the first time in my knowledge, it was a chance for the industry to be in the public's eye without loss of life and without real economic damage. Did we do the best we could? A, we didn't expect it, but B, I think we had the opportunity and we got into the public's mind and imagination. And who will ever forget that meme of the David and Goliath with the tiny little excavator and the big ship? We were fortunate that this was a maritime event that did have oil, water, and dead.
Picture. That was part of the picture with the smallest excavator.
Yeah.
The picture.
But it was dramatic, and people for the first time understood the relationship between themselves and shipping. It was very much positioned as your cars, your electronics, your clothing, and your food are on the ships that are being held up because of this accident. So that relationship was built. Now we have to continue to reinforce that relationship. I think that's where the real work needs to come into play.
Okay, Stavros, let's go back to our initial. And what should be the top priorities of each stakeholder from your perspective? You have a listed company in your group, so you are a large operator, so you have a number of priorities.
Yes, I would continue from where Carleen left. As I said to my presentation as well, we have to always to keep the balance between the different pillars. We cannot avoid not to implement requirements, let's put it that way, from its, but depending on which perspective or which stakeholder we are each time, we have different application of its ESG pillars. For us, for a shipping company, listed company, yes, we are comply and huge operator as well, having both dry and wet fleet. Environmental regulations are there. We have to comply, otherwise we cannot do anything, as you know. Listed company governance, the governance side is quite easy, let's put it that way, because this is stock exchange requirements, so everything is there already. My concern is not listing companies, how easy to comply with, I would say, on a voluntary basis. This is one of my concerns. And if allow me, only one thing to say about your question regarding what happened to the Suez Canal and everything. And one brief comment. I realized from from friends, not colleagues, when they saw this small excavator and the huge ship, they asked, is that really 400 meters? How many thousands of TEUs on board? I said, yes, guys, this is our shipping today. It's 400 meters. This is what we're talking about, shipping. It was a very good opportunity to understand what we are doing. And as you said, Carleen, it was from the other side, because we didn't have any incident, any pollution or anything. We can have some funny aspect of this one to understand and to be able to say to sell this in a different way, let's say. Thank you.
I'm sure that with respect to the Ever Given, even ourselves, we are not in the position to fully understand what the size of the Ever Given, because if you put these 20,000 boxes, the one next to each other, it will be 120 kilometers in length. So it's a huge number of boxes. And again, even we in the market do not necessarily understand the size of the ship. So let's move to Maria. Maria, your thoughts?
Yes. Well, from our experience, at least so far as classification society, I can say that most of the companies, when they speak about sustainability, greenhouse gas emissions, the conversation stops there for most of them, okay? So usually the company needs a lot of training. And in order to get used to the E and S and G, and all of them, they are interconnected. I refer to Stavros. What Stavros says is correct. Companies that are listed companies, they're a little bit above with respect to the rest of the companies. I believe that the principles are the same for all of them. All of them have to be, either it is a ship owner or a manager or a port, it has to be environmental friendly. It has to take care of the people. It has to take care of the people that they work with them. It has to have a corporate governance, which is trustworthy, as we have already said, diversification. It has to be transparent and accountable. All the things are the same. But so far, I believe that our shipping industry has these bits and pieces. They are somewhere in the map. They are not in a specific location. We didn't put them under specific reporting, but they're all over the place. So we have to take them, combine them, and make an ESG report with all the factors, with all of them. It's a matter of training. It's a matter of training, and I believe that it's the first time that I say this, and I find it very, very peaceful, that we act proactively and not after the incident. It's the first time that we try to be a little bit more ahead of what is going to be happening than following what it has already happened before. Yeah. So practically it's the same thing, but we have to make it a little bit more concrete to make it happen.
With respect to the training, you said that we've seen that necessity may be the best teacher, because yes, players in the market who have a significant B2C, business to consumer footprint, like the big cruise operators and the big container companies, and they are much more, let's say, tuned into into having a public, let's say, interface, explaining to the market what is going on, how they should face this as they move forward, and so on and so forth. And we haven't seen that happening, let's say, we will hear from Kostas, from smaller players, let's say 50, 60, maybe 10, 20 ships, and those who operate on the dry bulk and the tanker market, because they have different needs. But I understand what you would like to say about the training. Let's hear from Jan. Jan has leading an organization who has some of the best players in the world. Jan, your thoughts on the priorities of each player?
Yes, thank you, Apostolos. Well, it's very nice to hear the comments I just heard also from Maria, and I think we are very much on the same page. We experience exactly the same. When I look to the participants in the Green Award program, not only on the sea side, but also on the inland side, we see a very similar route. Of course, for everybody it's important. We all should comply from A till Z, because at the end, if you don't join, if you don't invest in the future, you will be out. You will lose the game. That's how we see it. So you really have to be alert to stay in business over the next, let's say, over the next 20 years. When I'm listening to Maria and when I'm listening to Stavros, it sounds like that finance is giving the direction towards the right direction. I don't know if that's good. I don't know, because everything is always about the dollar or the euro or whatever. But it looks like that in this case, finance is giving the direction. And that's of course very important. And we see that also in our program for inland shipping. There we see that the Green Award is a quality brand for inland shipping when it's about green investment, green loans from the European investment banks and a local bank in the Netherlands, Rabobank. So when an entrepreneur wants to do a green investment, it needs a quality brand like the Green Award in order to get a significant reduction on its interest rate. And that makes it happening. So we see all of a sudden the ship owners buying new engines or investing in new technologies, and they're going in the right direction. So this is what I would like to add. Thank you.
Okay, Kostas, let's hear from you. You represent Intercargo, which is the association of the dry cargo owners. What are your thoughts towards these ESG developments? What should be the priorities?
Yes, as it was said earlier, one thing that our members recognize for sure is that the further reduction of greenhouse gas emissions is the greatest environmental challenge ahead. So we're in the quest for, the industry is in the quest for new technologies and fuels. It is a historic challenge, but it is not just a technical one. Companies are in urgent need to embrace a new mindset and culture. Many elements of it are not really new, but there is a need under the ESG framework to systematize and encapsulate achievements already made. So for example, under the environmental dimension, we have the emissions. Intercargo is engaged actively at the IMO deliberations for the reduction of greenhouse gas and other emissions, but there is also marine pollution. Shipping has handled plastic wastes longer than most countries have had plastic recycle programs in place. We need to recognize that. Under the social aspects, we have labor and human rights. We have seafarers as key workers, a very pertinent theme under COVID impact and with the ongoing humanitarian crisis. But as it was said earlier as well, our industry and our sector has been doing a great job in serving basic needs of humanity in line with the UN Sustainable Development Goals. Number 1, no poverty. Number 2, zero hunger. Number 3, improved well-being. But also under governance, we recently launched a set of best practices, Dry BMS, which is a self-assessment quality scheme for companies in the dry bulk sector. Overall, the purpose, and it's an opportunity to promote shipping and to earn the recognition it deserves in the wider context of this century's challenges for humanity.
Okay, thank you, Kostas. Now, my next, let's say, item for discussion would be the best practices and lessons to be learned from the past and from other industries. Now, starting with Carleen. Carleen, you mentioned the Global Maritime Forum. We are supportive of the work that Global Maritime Forum provides, but this organization was not there in the market 5 years ago. It's a relatively new organization brought out of necessity to the market, and we're going to see more in the years to come. So I would like to ask you, as this ESG towards sustainable shipping is something, let's put in that sense, new in the agenda. What are the best practices and lessons to be learned from other industries or from the past? Let's hear your thoughts.
Well, I think as you point out, Apo, I don't know if we have to look to the past or other industries to the emergence of best practices. Collaboration is key, and we're seeing more and more of them develop and become effective, such as you mentioned through the Global Maritime Forum. But the global GMF is building on a good foundation of success upon which we can springboard in order, including some recent ones, like it was mentioned earlier. Our transition with the IMO 2020 global sulfur cap was successful and not seamless, but it was primarily successful, where you saw regulations that a regulation that was implemented and enforced. I think we have to remember that developing the regulations to run across the board and make it a level playing field is one aspect, but also making sure those regulations are enforced. I think it's important to have clear goals, require a high level of transparency, and be prepared for that tough work of enforcement. You know, another example is the double hull tanker regulation that came into play. And through its enforcement, we've seen a dramatic drop in oil pollution. So we do have that, but we can't lose sight of the work we need to do in the social and governance side of the equation, as has been demonstrated by the crew change crisis. We need the collaboration such as the Neptune Declaration in order to make sure we're looking at all aspects of ESG.
Okay, Stavros, your take? Any best practice or lessons to be learned?
Yeah, I would say, and this is always my opinion. For the ESG right now, it's a great opportunity for our industry to do in the right way. What I mean, to do by ourselves, to contribute all the industry parties within our industry in the proper way. We have the successful lessons to be learned was from our industry. Of course, there are some other industries, aviation, for example, that we may have some success there. There is no need to reinvent the wheel, but it's a great opportunity for us to set the framework as we believe for our industry to develop with the proper way without being influenced from other practices which sometimes is not 100% complied with us. This is my opinion for that.
Okay, Maria?
I will take it from where Stavros have left it. We have seen in our company, in ABS, we have seen some companies where we have been submitted, they submitted to us their ESG reporting with, let's say, a score which was not very good. And finally, the score was not very good, not because the company was not performing well, but because the standards that they have been attributed in order to meet the score were not correct. What I want to say it is, okay, there is a history. I like to take lessons from the history or from the other industries, automation, automotive industry, aviation, as we have already said. I like to take the lessons from there because we have seen from the past where companies change a lot their board, for example, because of bad instances that happened or so. I like this part, but however, as we have already said, it is a marine industry. We have a way that we are working. We cannot take it 100% and adapt it, but we have to find the right path in order to make it to marinize it. I would like to say what it is already. And indeed, cooperation and collaboration for all the industry parties, marine industry parties, it is necessary for all of us to work together. You cannot work as an individual on this thing. I would like to just comment one more thing, that it is a big change. It is going to be a big change. We are going slowly towards that pace. It's not bad, this. I'm very fan of changes. So if we embrace the changes, it's even much more better on this thing. And we can take the examples from the previous history, but not 100% for us. Evaluate them and try to keep the positive things and how we can make them more shipping, I would say.
I'll give you a couple of examples out of the, not from my mind. I will not,
facts, yes.
not dive into my mind. I will just pick from what you said. Carleen, in her initial presentation, numbered, I think, 7 or 8 initiatives, market initiatives. Costas, while he was just speaking, he didn't present anything, mentioned 3 or 4 initiatives by Intercargo. We haven't seen that sort of initiatives, evident in the market, let's say 10 years ago. We've seen that the market stakeholders tend to communicate a little bit better, trying to collaborate, as Carleen said, a little bit better, and so on and so forth. And this will be made to a faster mode in the future about that. Now, with regards to standards, because Stavros said, and you further elaborate on the standards, are you happy with the reporting standards we have in the market? Because many of the players are not. And when the banks say, I would like to have this and this and this, and they ask because they don't understand something like an ESG ready investment, which it does not exist, are you happy? So my question is direct. Are you happy with the reporting standards with regards to ESG? You are an expert on the market. What do you feel? Maria?
Sorry, I'm saying that, okay, ideally we would like something to be more aligned with shipping. Okay, we don't have it, so we have to take from what we have so far. We have GRI, we have SISAB. In ABS, when we work, we use
generic, very generic.
Very generic, yes, very generic. This is why you want somebody who knows the job. This is why you want some, because we lack of the exact standards for us, okay, for the marine industry. So you want somebody to know very well the shipping, and to know very well how to assist on this, how to assist the companies on this, not to have a bad negative score with no reason. So unfortunately, we have to go with this. At least so far, unless there is something that it has gone out right now and I don't know about this, we have this and we have to go this, but you have to do it on the right way, not to lose your marks.
The road is going to be uphill.
I just want to interject here is that NAMEPA's CSR ESG platform was designed and developed by shipping people for shipping people.
Mm-hmm.
So we have, and not just ship owners, it's for associations, it's for solution providers, it's for individuals, it's for people engaged in the shipping industry. So we do have that, but we need to all be aligned in what those goals are and how we're delivering those. But we do have the standard, we have the marinization that you're looking for.
Yes, I mean, you are correct, Carleen. I fully agree on this. You have to be aligned.
I do not necessarily agree with you, Carleen, because I understand what you do and it is correctly on the right track. But what the banks or maybe someone outside and maybe not having a proper understanding wants, they want someone like a third-party organization providing some sort of business assurance, and that requires a specific standard and some specific tasks that you as the NAMEPA are not, let's say, as a stakeholder, because what you do is voluntary. It's not mandatory, okay? So what you do over there is not exactly what they need, but I understand, and I said up front that what you do is on the right track. I understand that. Now let's hear from Jan. Jan, your thoughts on best practice and lessons to be learned from the past.
Yes, thank you, Apostolos. Well, I like to first make a step out of shipping and go to another industry. And when I look to the food industry, how they adopt these ESGs, they make it a business case and they make money out of it. They do it in the right way. They try to be as transparent as possible. And they try to change the way how they are operating and show as good as possible how they are situated in the society and how they do their business. And it is beneficial for them, not on the first moment, but on the longer run. And maybe that's easier for them because they're land-based and it's a total different business. But I think the shipping industry has to learn from these parties and they have to come, well, it's all about MASI and together, as it's also indicated by the other speakers. We have to find a direction where we at least can link to. And I think when I just go back in 1994, when we started our program with the Green Award and after a while the ISM code was introduced, good heavens, a lot of shipping companies had no clue what to do. Whilst others who were in business like stock listed companies, they already took on board quality management in comparison with others. It took a long time to get them on the right track. So I think this is the key issue, that we have to collaborate much, much more together. However, I want to make one more point to the previous discussion as well. What is surprising is quite often that companies you don't expect it from, they're performing extremely well. It's very funny. Even, maybe I shouldn't say that, but even with flags, companies based in a country you don't expect a proactive approach, they do. We were surprised with a lot of issues. I just like to make that statement. Thank you.
Okay. Kostas, let's hear from you on best practice and lessons to be learned from the past, because we've seen Intercargo is making strides, fantastic steps over the recent years.
Yes, I would say absolutely yes, and definitely not. What I mean is that we need to learn lessons and get inspiration from other industries, but cannot wear the same suit of solutions, if you like. Shipping has its own special story to tell and its own way to find. We need to study past disruptions and how past changes were exploited or embraced. But again, we should rather not attempt replication. We have a new set of potentially disruptive challenges and groundbreaking future ahead of us. Another point I would like to make is that we should study the industrials before the tech. Shipping is real economy. It's a hard asset business, not some light virtual or ferry or airy service. And the recent Suez Canal blockage was such a vivid example. So the assumptions that we knew are eroding in front of our eyes, and we're facing a great set of risks, but which are also business opportunities. It's a long, complex process for a business model at both strategic and operational level. I would also again repeat that this is a time for partnerships, proactivity, and ESG leadership, and so there is no place for latecomers or for loners. And every traditional company must engage in some soul-searching and business evolution process to survive, be resilient, and secure a sustainable future.
Okay. Carleen, I see that you would like to comment. I see that you're sitting silently over there. You send me some notes with your eyes, and you would like to comment on what I said. We're listening from you. I'll give you a minute.
Well, I just think to what Kostas just said, this has to transcend all aspects of business. But I'd also like to reinforce it needs to be a level playing field. You can't have one group of companies in, really investing heavily, and another group of companies saying, we'll let the other guy do it. So it really needs to be done across the playing field. And I also feel that it's important that we get financial support from all related parties, all the stakeholders, in order to achieve these goals. We need the financial support from all stakeholders for the R&D, for the investment. And so there ought to be like an assignment of costs, if you will, throughout the value chain. Somebody made an estimate about a month ago that the cost for compliance just on the emissions piece, not the social or governance piece, but the cost of compliance, if you amortized it across the goods sold, it would be 7 cents for a pair of shoes. We can all pay 7 cents to have a sustainable world.
If you do the math, 7 cents, billions of dollars. So it may sound nice if you see 7 cents per piece of, a pair of shoes, but if you add the billions, it's a huge number. So people are going to get scared. So I have 2 questions in order to conclude the panel. I have 1 question for those who are representing associations, Carleen, Jan, and Kostas. So I'd like to ask you if you have any plans on the pipeline, any partnerships that you are working with, and if you have something to, let's say, not announce for the time being, but something you work on to be released in the future. Any sort of ideas other than what you have already announced, Carleen?
Well, we continue to refine our CSR ESG platform, and we continue to educate the public on marine environmental awareness and linking the value proposition of the industry with the public. That's one of our core missions. But we're working hard to make sure that our industry can be the best possible industry, providing incredible services to global society.
Yeah. Jan, any plans you're working for the time being?
Yes, well, it's more a long-term plan because we are researching that at the moment. We are now trying to create the Green Award 3.0, and that means that all the elements we are dealing with linked to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals or to ESG in general, we are trying to find out what elements ship owners compliant with, how can they be related to the ESG? So make it measurable. Right now it's a Green Award certificate and that's it. And of course there's a report behind it, but apparently the stakeholders want something different. So that's what we are aiming for, but it takes a little time.
Okay. Kostas, other than the dry BMS, and if you want, you can tell us about the dry BMS, have any sort of timeline, or the Neptune declaration, any plans you have and you're working for the time being, be announced in the future?
There is actually some work in progress. I have no idea how it may have reached your ears. I don't think it has. I'm afraid I cannot share anything about it. Dry BMS would be a pillar of a much more comprehensive scheme, as I see it. I'm afraid I cannot say more at this stage. What maybe I would like to stress is that in this process, it's a top-down process, so leadership needs to anticipate trends, understand risks, inspire change today to secure success tomorrow. In relation to what Carleen said earlier, I have some hesitation. I'm a little skeptic about all companies moving at the same pace. This is an ongoing process. There will be first movers. There is content and reason for every company to take steps, because this, as I said, creates growth potential, creates business opportunity and business benefit. But I'm a little hesitant on using the ESG agenda by some interests as a vehicle for commercial purposes. We should be very careful not to create market distortions before we reach a level of maturity. So I'm not negative to the multiple speed process of getting there. Our association and our members to a large degree tick several of the boxes in the ESG agenda, if you like, but for sure we need to systematize, put in a certain framework of common reference all these initiatives and achievements that are being made, and more are of course ahead of us.
Any specific indication on when the dry BMS will be finally released, the final version? Indication?
Yes, the public consultation, which is ongoing, will conclude by end of April. And after that, we need to sort and announce the governance of the new NGO and how the scheme will be, the platform that will host the scheme. I expect soon after that to be able to announce, to report some more specific milestones.
Okay, thank you. Jan, you have something to comment or add?
Yeah, what Kostas just was saying, referring to what Carleen was saying, whilst we are discussing all these, well, this session, I think the word ownership is extremely important. So what I mean to say by that is that the company who is taking action on ESG, they have to feel ownership of what they are doing. And if we set the goal, set the standard for them, you will never gain ownership. Or the risk is low that you gain ownership. And that means that what is already a problem, what is the real implementation if you don't have ownership? And we see that anyhow in shipping in general, if we look over the whole global fleets. Some companies are very good. Some companies sound good, but the reality is different. So ownership, I would like to add to this discussion.
But I think it's important for us to set the expectations that everyone is engaged in this process and everyone is contributing to that process. And with a nod to the ever given, as it was proven, a rising tide floats all boats.
That's a nice comment. That's a nice comment. Now, I have one last question to wrap up the panel. I won't ask you what will be the biggest challenge, because it will be decarbonization. So I'm taking this one out. You have already answered that. I would like to ask you to pick one thing, let's say your top priority item, in order to move towards a more sustainable future for shipping, for our industry. If you select one thing that would have either a profound or an immediate impact, what would it be? Let's say I'll give you 30 seconds to wrap up your thoughts. Carleen, your number one priority.
Number one priority is we need strong regulation, which will not be proscriptive in how we reach goals, but will set those goals so that the industry moves collectively towards them. And further to that, they must be enforced by flag and port state control. But it needs to be a level playing field, but that level playing field has to be fully engaged and take ownership.
You said the history of the last 30 years in a couple of sentences now. This is the challenge we are facing the past 30 years, since the introduction of the ISM.
Well, I think we're in a new era where not only will it be presented as theoretical, but it will become practical and implementable.
I understand. I'm just saying you expressed what we are living the past 30 years, and we will be living for the next 30 years, absolutely. Just a comment. Stavros, your thoughts, your pick.
Yeah, I think that the improvement of our business performance, as a general statement, comment, but through a number of actions, I would say big challenge, digitalization, will be in front of us. Innovation, both on board the vessel, but also with new business practices. And finally, our human capital. And I'm not talking about only for our people aboard the vessels, but also the headquarters. We have to start thinking with a new mindset right now. We're going to use different skills, and we have to develop, especially for the new generation, these different skills that we need to have in order to move forward towards 2030, 2050 goals.
Maria, your take, your thoughts.
Okay, we say that we don't touch decarbonization, so I don't touch.
You said it. It's going to be number one.
No. You mean it's when they say sustainability? Yes. Now I would like to say what I was trying to think. What is the top priority? Well, it's the whole mindset that we have that it needs to change, which is extremely difficult. This to be done very easily, but I believe that we have the tools around us in order to make it happen. We need a more precise regulatory framework. Okay, I work for ABS, so I love regulation. So we need a more precise regulatory framework in order to assist all of us to make it happen. I like the idea of the green financing very much, and I think that the companies must like it even more than organizations like myself or so, like I present or so, because now it's a part that everybody is being involved on this. Sometimes the bank is only the intermediate person, so there's an investor at the bank, behind the bank. So you go to the bank, who is now the intermediate person, who goes to the investor. So it's a bigger chain. I like this idea, but we need familiarization with this idea, with the green financing, of how this is happening. And I would like to say that yes, very important part, as Stavros said, is the people. The people is our future. Okay, if you train them in a proper way, they will be able to give you what you want after some time. But it's not only the focus on the finance. It's a more broader. It's more behavioral competencies that the people should have in order to be able to adapt to these changes that are happening.
That's okay. Jan, your takes.
Yes, not only because of decarbonization, but certainly I would like to see that we get a proper fuel for ships to be propelled over the seas. I think there will be so much differences coming up very soon. It would be very nice if we have a certain kind of direction there. And then secondly, it's indeed like Stavros said, like Maria said, and Carleen as well, people are number one. The people are the fuel for the company, if we want to talk about fuel. So yeah. I think people are number one and we have to focus on that. They can make it happen.
You remind me of a Chinese proverb saying the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. So the second best time is now. So I understand what you're saying, but it takes time. I fully understand and I cannot agree more. Let's hear from Kostas.
Yes, thank you. People are number one, but key barrier I need to remind is that needed technical evolutions and the new fuels, as Jan said. We need a technological revolution that requires a collective effort largely beyond the ship owner community, with technology and fuel providers invited to materialize tremendous innovations. We can, in this process, we should not risk disrupting the must-have and basic services humanity cannot do without. This is the fallacy of most so-called green NGOs. This is not our sector, is not some luxury pastime that we can just do without. Sometimes I have the impression that I fight against a green crusade against the absolute evil. We cannot be constructive by throwing stones to all directions in the name of some unrealistic green agenda. So there is a great opportunity for multi-stakeholder collaboration with an understanding of shipping and not blind opposition and negation that we see sometimes, that we're faced with.
Just a quick comment on what you said about these green NGOs. I don't think you have anything, not you, but anyone else, to be afraid of these green, NGOs, because they are not mainstream. What they say is, they have different agendas and different priorities, and I'm not sure that they have a strong voice in the market. So,
from my experience, because we want to engage with them, but from my experience at the International Maritime Organization, I do not recall any of them saying anything positive about our sector that we're all very much proud of. And this does not help collaboration for sure. Anyway, they're not the problem. We have a technological challenge ahead of us. That's the key barrier for me at the moment.
That's okay. Jan, yes.
Yeah, what Kostas now just said, this is very important, but that's being said so many times. People don't know what the shipping industry is. The society doesn't know. And yesterday I had a friend in my house, and she's a teacher. And I showed her, based on the discussion on the Ever Given, I showed her what is going on. And she was completely flabbergasted. She had no clue. And she said, oh, I want to tell my little children I'm giving lessons to. So this is a message, and that's for the whole industry to do.
Yeah.
Thank you.
NAMEPA has the educational tools.
We are an invisible industry. We are an invisible industry for a number of reasons, but this is for another panel to discuss. So we're not going to solve this problem now. I would like to thank you all. We are out of time. I would like to thank you all. Thank you for the interesting, I would say, thought-provoking and very valid discussion we had on practical issues. I would like to thank you all very much for participating in this panel. I would like to thank all our viewers, and we'll be in touch. Thank you.
Thank
you
you
very much.
Thank you very
Thank you.
much.